All the cool kids keep enthusiasm rationed, right down to the last explosive ounce. But I'd rather indulge my many passions, even if my squaritude's a little too pronounced. Perhaps I do not strike you as a geek, with the horn-rimmed glasses and knee-high Argyle socks. But nerdery is more than wardrobe deep, and I'm a nerd down in my heart, and that's where nerdhood rocks. I'm better acquainted than...
Hello, it's time again for another episode of Geek Talk MD. I'm Dave, and this is... What was that? Hello? What on earth was that? Okay, I guess that was Moses.
Yeah.
And his sound effects out of his butt, no doubt.
And
this is episode 12. What are you saying?
Found an old toy.
I'm sure you did. And obviously the batteries are still strong. So anyway, this is episode 12. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm just wiping the tears from my eyes. I'm laughing so hard.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you're wiping. Okay. Well, today's top. Okay, you there? Okay. I'm here. Okay. Well, today's topic. For those of us who are interested in listening.
I'm listening.
Huh?
I'm listening.
Okay. So today's topic is going to be about growing up with geekdom. The episode today is actually dedicated. It's a little bit different than what we've done before, where we're often trying to give opinions and poke fun at one another. But today we decided we're going to do something a little bit different, and really do a call out there for our geekdom brothers and sisters. And just talk about, different topics about how we grew up, being different, being geek. We want to, have the voice of the quiet majority out there that feel that they have to keep their geekdom private. Maybe they feel alone or isolated with their geek tendencies. Or if you know someone out there who is a little bit different, who's interested in the sci-fi and fantasy, and because of that they feel, separated or kind of on their own, and you're not sure how to reach out to them to show them your support, even if you yourself may not be, necessarily interested in the genre. Cool, Mo?
Yeah, that sounds really good. To clarify, geek, nerd, whatever term you want to use, they're all pretty much interchangeable. Yeah. And to help us with this discussion, we've got a couple of old friends who have been here on the podcast before.
Old, not necessarily old as an age, although it is partially true too.
Yeah. So, from our previous episode on horror films, we've got our old friend Ross.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. Nosferatu. Okay.
No, Rossferatu.
Rossferatu.
Ah. And our self-proclaimed 19-year-old Pete from the video game episode.
19 again.
Hi. I'm the youngest one here.
But not quite 19. Again.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi.
Real.
And age only, not necessarily maturity.
Very true. As I'm sure the episode will play out and show everybody.
Yeah, just in case you thought that Dave's intro was meant that this was going to be a somber story of an episode, no.
Well, it's supposed to be uplifting.
Well, you know what? It was for me because, I was born in Athens. I came here when I was 3 years old, and all I hear is, oh, didn't Greeks invent anal sex and all this? My whole life I had to put up with it, and it's rough, man.
Pete,
I'm glad you guys...
Pete,
what? Huh? What?
Geek.
What?
Geek, not Greek. Geek.
Geek. Wow. Oh, can we cut that? Okay, you promised me this.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. I'm pressing the pause button now.
Okay.
So,
so growing up as a...
the merits of tzatziki.
Yeah, I mean, I think you grow up as a normal kid, roughly. You're going out to recess, or I don't know about you guys. Like when you were a kid, it's going to be different.
Back in the Napoleonic era, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so you know what I think? No, but nobody's really born a geek per se, but it's more like
You don't think there's a geek gene?
no. I mean, there's some kind of a gene that may be activated upon exposure to certain stimuli or certain stigmatized stimuli, you might say. Like, it's other people that really brand you a geek, isn't it?
Is it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you have to be involved with something. Like, for a lot of us, it was probably role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and all.
Or comics.
And
Well,
oh yeah, that's a good
Or
point.
a mixture thereof.
Well, not everyone, necessarily starts off that way. But, I guess it all depends on what you're growing up around or what's
Yeah, I was saying for us, most of us around here.
Well, let's
I could be
face it,
wrong.
it is much like with many other things, a label that
Yeah.
people get stuck with.
Yeah. Well, actually, to that point, let's follow the suggestion of a former guest. I can't remember, was it Josh or Zach
Josh.
that suggested it? But let's try to define what we're talking about when we say geek, then, or nerd, or whatnot. For example, off the top of my head, I could think of there's the closet geek who loves sci-fi and fantasy and other types of that genre, but they don't think that they are geeks. They in denial, I guess. Do you know anybody else out there like that?
So as opposed to Greek, they're Egyptian?
Yeah, exactly.
What, are we getting into the Ptolemy era now?
Well, denial.
Denial.
Egyptian.
Here's the
Getting a
thing.
lot of that at work these days. There's a lot of science fiction books coming out, but they're just throwing them into general fiction as if they don't want them to be in the sci-fi section.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I remember once hearing an interview with my favorite author, the late, great Sir Terry Pratchett, and one of his first books to end up on the New York Times bestseller list, and he was in the States for some kind of book signing tour or something like that, and walked into one of the major bookstore chains in New York City and went to the section where there was supposed to be all the books that are on the shelf that are the New York Times bestseller list, and his book wasn't there. And he went to the store manager and asked, well, what happened? Where's my book? Oh, we keep that. That's in the sci-fi fantasy. We don't let them out of there.
Behind the curtain.
Just we don't let them out of like they're monsters that or the black sheep of the family.
That's right, just shove the plate of food under the door.
Down he
That
goes.
that was an interesting point you made about defining geek, though, because I just started thinking about it now that you mentioned it, and it really is hard to define because, I mean, let's say it's not anyone who's ever watched Star Wars is automatically a geek, right?
Well,
I mean, because everyone's seen it, right? So there's people who even geeks, actual geeks, would not claim as their own,
Yeah.
That is
Pseudo-geeks.
true. That is true.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it enough to watch it? Like, for example, now we've got all the popularity of the comic books, and they're making all these great movies. Now here's the jocks, the cheerleaders who are now watching these movies and then possibly enjoying them. Are they now
No.
They're not.
I'd say it's more
No.
a case of somebody who's such a who enjoys whatever media they're fascinated with, but they're enjoying it to the point where they concentrate on even the minutia, all the tiny details of it.
Right.
Whether it be
sure.
comic books or movies or books in general or science or computers or video games or what have you. And, I mean, you could even go so far, and I know I'm pushing it a bit, but when you get these people that are so into one specific sport, or like say somebody who's really into football, American football, for those of you who actually believe that isn't really football.
Anyway.
And so anybody outside of Canada and the United States.
Yeah.
They get into concentrating on all the players' stats, and they get involved in all this fantasy football nonsense. And I mean, and to them, it's nonsense. I mean,
Right.
And that's
It's serious business.
But that is to an extent geekdom, just from a sports standpoint.
Oh, interesting. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you're talking about the definition of a geek, and you're right.
Yeah.
That's what a geek is, right? Someone who really focuses on one particular thing. But in terms of the label geek, it really doesn't follow as you're not really a baseball geek, right? They don't
No.
say that. Yeah.
But the term fan actually, its root
Fanatic.
is from fanatic,
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. It is
For the sake of our discussion, are we putting out our open hand to even the sports geek who may not think that they're who may not think of themselves as a geek?
No,
I think it's interesting that
Bruce Lee
Moses,
geek. Here
I think it is interesting that Moses makes that distinction because it has to be said. That's what a geek truly is. It could be for any field, but we also talk, like geek, nerd, stuff like that. It's more of the jock,
Right.
nerd type of
does
dynamic.
But it does seem to
I've
apply.
made the same distinction with people, when I cosplay or know people that cosplay, that, you're called a geek and things. And I raise the point, well, what's the difference between me dressing up as a Star Trek character or you putting blue face paint on going to a Leaf game?
Exactly. Very good point.
Right.
Well, okay. The difference is that you will very rarely see anybody doing porn from a guy painting himself blue and going to a Leaf game. Cosplay.
That's
on
where
the
you're
other-
wrong, my friend.
Cosplay, on the other hand, man, sometimes.
No, but I don't-
when I'm putting together the slides for this podcast, I'll type in like say Slave Leia on Google. Oh my God, some of the stuff, and I'm not talking drawings. No, real life photographs of people doing cosplay, and it's just like. Oh God! If I had seen that when I saw the original Star Wars, I probably would have been traumatized for life.
So what you're saying is to be classified as a geek, you have to have these sexual connotations?
No. Although although joking
wish.
aside, I would say that it's definitely geekiness, nerdiness is usually more of a fanaticism regarding more intellectual properties.
You think so, or do you think it's a term? Even though you got the fan geek or the sci-fi geek, is it not really just a derogatory term used against by one group used against another, even though they themselves are a form of geekdom?
So you're saying that much like the N-word, we're taking the word back.
Well, it's becoming okay again.
It is. Has anyone seen the video by Felicia Day for Now I'm the One That's Cool? It's basically about all these people from the guild that were geeks as kids, and now they're the ones that are the cool kids.
Well,
Yeah,
there's something to be said about that.
You look at it's really kind of amazing nowadays. You look at some of the people that are, shall we say, coming out of the closet, the geekdom closet. You've got Chris Hardwick, who's now a millionaire from creating the Nerdist podcast. You've got Patton Oswalt, who's one of the most in-demand stand-up comics and script writers in the world right now. And even, and this will shock you, Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
Is
Well, that's not a
actually-
surprise. I mean, he's been. We'll come back to that kind of classification a little bit later on, but he's been pretty open about his gaming interests.
Yeah, but I mean, to look at him, to hear him speak, you'd never expect it.
Well, again, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But with regards to again this definition of geek and whether or not it's still a term that's being used to put somebody down or to label them negatively.
Oh yeah,
like nerd was.
You remember the old commercial for the Mr. Big candy bar where the bully comes into the high school dance and he starts yelling at the smaller guy, "Hey geek, hey geek," and he slaps a Mr. Big into the bully's hand and says, "That's Mr. Geek to you."
Well, that's good, But yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about because that same I don't remember if that person was a football jock or not, but that person could be well into the stats and watching every game and painting their face and going to the tailgate parties and this type of thing. So technically, they are a geek for that sport or for that team, and here that person is being hypocritical and negatively labeling this other person as a geek when they themselves are a form of geek.
Yeah, but they'd never see it that way.
True. Hence the reason for bringing up this particular type of geek, I think.
Yeah, you see, it's too broad of a thing, because in that case, everybody's a geek. I mean, everyone's got at least one thing they go nuts about, or almost everyone.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah. I mean, there are plenty of people out there that just have no passion about anything, really, in their
Are
lives.
there?
Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty. Whether, they just have some kind of a mental block about it, or they've had it beaten out of them.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
that's good. Well, there's people in poor conditions, and you
Well,
got
but
other
there are-
things to worry about.
Yeah, I mean,
But
let's
as well,
face
you've
it.
got-
Some person who's starving to death on the streets of Calcutta probably
Right.
isn't
Interested?
it probably isn't going over the minutia of the latest episode of Doctor Who.
or whether or not they're a geek.
Yeah.
But but
Sometimes-
as well, there are some people that are the subservient type too. So they themselves don't have a particular interest, whereas they're more interested in supporting their spouses or their family, or just sort of being that person, that go-to person to get things done or whatnot.
You find somebody like you describe, who's very subservient and such, and if you dig deep enough, you'll find that there is something that they're really big fans of. They just keep it to themselves.
Yeah, Ross, you were saying something there. Sorry.
Well, some of this is even a Western thing too, because you've got some of the Eastern European authors that use science fiction as a political state, and that Stanislaw Lem used it to put down the Soviet Union under the guise of science fiction. And
Well, that even happens here. Margaret Atwood uses science fiction in her books, but mostly just to push forward her feminist agendas.
Right.
Boy,
or
that
the
stopped the
War of Worlds.
conversation.
Remember the War of the Worlds on the radio broadcast?
yeah.
But this is why I wanted to bring up this particular topic, because I think that as you've said, the term geek, in many respects is used or is perceived as a negative
Connotations.
in negative connotations, when usually it's being used by people who could they themselves be considered geeks. But of course, as Moses said, is that they would never call themselves that.
Right. Like you're saying, like it's a derogatory term, because as we established, almost everyone is a geek. But here's the thing. I think you have to be like full-blooded geek in order to get the label, like, because we all wear a lot of hats. So like you say, Vin Diesel could be a geek. He's also a geek, apart from being a jock and apart from being whatever else he does,
Yeah, he's really apparently really into D&D and such.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Ross, correct me if I'm wrong. You'd probably know best. The term geek, didn't that originally used to be a term used in like carnival sideshows?
Yeah, it was freaks and geeks. You had the carnival sideshows, and even if you've seen the old movie Freaks.
Todd Branch.
Well, again, I guess that's in part where the negative thoughts come when someone is called a geek.
Yeah.
Geeky freak.
I think
and
the
nerd,
geek
all the
was
rest of
supposed to
those.
be the carnival freak that would like eat anything or something like that.
Well, that's again that may be specific to the movie, but
No, I mean
in
that
general.
was in general the term where the term came from. The geek was
okay.
the carnival freak that would you'd see him eating like rubber bands and nails and.
Well, okay, but what about so we've talked about that type of geek, someone who has those general interests, but you're seeing this more and more today, especially depicted in lots of movies, where you've got the person who's in a small town or is interested in, again, we're talking sci-fi fantasy, but as we've just said, it may not necessarily only be sci-fi fantasy, and they have this interest that is different than their town maybe believes or that their family believes.
Oh,
And-
me.
You?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
So am I talking about you?
I'm from a small town.
Oh yeah, I've been to that
Toronto.
small town. Yeah, I can believe it.
I only have images of a
I'm
filing
from
cabinet.
Toronto. I'm from Aurelia, and
Very picturesque place though.
yeah, it's gorgeous. Haven't been back in a while, but yeah, it's when I was a kid. We can maybe even talk about how we knew we were geeks. Like
Did you know that you were a geek? Your feeling?
not initially, but when I was a kid, probably 9 or 10, was in the local library, and my brother took me over to the science fiction section, and took a couple of books out, and that's history. And I put together a D&D club, and I even got interviewed by the local newspaper, and they tried
out.
Yeah, I was probably about 14 or 15 at the time, but they were trying to go the whole route of this is demonic, and and I'm defending the hell out of it.
Did you know that was their take on it before they started the interview? Or?
No.
Okay.
Wow. They did a number on you, didn't they?
Oh yeah, it was just.
How did your family feel about that kind of press?
Oh, they supported me. They.
Oh, that's good.
No, that wasn't a problem there. It was never any issue. Although one uncle later on, Christmas present got a cookbook with an inscription in. There's more to life than science fiction, but
oh fuck you.
Interesting. So would you say that thankfully you had the support of your family, but
yeah,
there's lots of people out there that don't.
They don't.
Oh, no.
They don't have that for sure.
But what kind of pressure were you getting? Let's say for school.
Well, I probably a little different. I got a lot of pressure because I was not. My brothers were athletes, but I wasn't. So going to school, same high school that one of my brothers went to. They always expected me to go into the same type of thing, and I wasn't there doing that. I was taking completely different courses, and so there was a little bit. I was weird. I joined the cadets when I was 15, and so I was an outcast on several different levels, not just geekdom.
Right.
But in so doing, I created friends for life, just like you guys, and found more people that were into it. So one of my best friends, who's unfortunately no longer with us, was I met during the cadets, and we were together all the time.
And did he have similar interests? Was he?
Yeah,
sci-fi
he was heavily into sci-fi and movies. He'd see him walking up the street with a book in hand, just ignoring everything around him. It's just. Yeah.
And how did he deal with his geekdom? I mean, did he find solace in the fact that you guys could talk about it together, or did he have support?
Mainly through us. His family wasn't really supportive of him. He'd been adopted, so he was really, hate to say it, but he did commit suicide. And yeah, I know it got dark fast, but
well,
but he had troubles. It had nothing to do with the geekdom. It was he was a troubled person all his life, and
right.
I think having some of us around him leveled that off. And when we split up after high school type thing, that's when
things got hard. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I've seen that too a lot. When I first grew up, I mean, when we've talked about role playing and so forth, I've talked about the local guys and Mozes' group, but I've had groups before that. Back when I was in public, grade 7, 8, 9, and we were isolated, very similarly because of our particular interest. And when I first started doing role playing, it was actually a cousin who introduced me to it. I thought it was interesting because of the mythology aspect of it. It was Dungeons and Dragons. And when I was talking with my few friends who I would talk about with movies, they seemed interested, and the three of us started a small group to start role playing. And some people were interested in what we were doing. We were in a smaller school, so the fact that there was three of us, in a regular sized school that would be nothing, but in a small school, that was, we were enough to be on our own, that people wouldn't really interfere with us too much. But we were definitely the guys in the backer, playing our game, and some people were interested, and they ended up joining us, and we had a small group that grew. But then when I changed schools, it was all over. And all those guys I used to know went to different schools, and here I am back in a school, and I'm all by myself. I don't have anybody here who I can relate to on this level. And that's what drove me towards my arts, because it was something I could do on my own. And if I wanted to draw dragons, it wasn't too odd for someone to have an interest in dragons and draw science fiction and so forth, because I'm just drawing it. I'm not doing or saying it.
Or a grand piano in the middle of a torture chamber.
Exactly. These things can happen, which is how Mo and I met. But it's what ended up getting me into art. But, it was pretty dark, when I first started, because I was feeling all alone. And, I can relate a lot with a lot of people who, again, they may feel that they're alone, or they haven't been able to make the connection. This is well before the internet. So, they didn't have Facebook friends that they could make or groups that they could make. And, you're basically on your own. You don't want to vocalize your interest to too many people because it'll automatically make you a target. And you just sort of go from there. And, thankfully through my art, I was like people who were at least interested in what I was drawing. Enough so that, I could talk to them about, the genre. And slowly we started to rebuild a gaming group, from scratch, pretty much. And that's how Mo started and a bunch of the others.
How about you, Pete?
Well, for me, it was actually you guys. I mean, I had joined up with the group there at, I think I was I'm 12 years old. And we were to start playing D&D, and I'd heard of it in passing, but at that age, I'm riding my bike, I'm doing other, you know what I mean? You're doing regular stuff. And so that's kind of what set it off. I remember coming to the session and just being amazed by, I'd never used my imagination like that before, honestly. I was more just physical as a kid. And one of the guys we were playing with at Wish, and you guys were talking about, The Hobbit and all that stuff. And I was like, what's The Hobbit? And so Ed tosses me a copy of The Hobbit. He's like, oh, here, take this, give it back when you're done. I was like, what? This is a book. And meanwhile, I had never read a book for pleasure outside of school. You know what I mean?
That's
before
never
that
for
point.
pleasure.
But
no, it's
so
true.
It's
true. I mean, let's face it. You when you're in school, they don't make reading fun. Not even close. They make
because
it
you're
chore.
not reading. You're not reading what you want to read. That's the real issue.
Well, you finish your story, and then and trust me, I'll go there.
I've got quite a few of those too.
Oh.
But so that's really what set the spark. I got through The Hobbit real quick. And then I was on to Lord of the Rings. So I was just steeped into this fantasy immediately. Yeah. And now, not only do I like the fantasy genre instantly, it's kind of the first thing I was really exposed to.
Gateway drug.
but then we're actually going in there and playing D&D.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all this stuff too. Oh, do I want to be an elf or no, I want a battle axe or something. So it was really cool as a kid.
You see, the thing was,
can I just point out something really quick? Sorry, I noticed you said you read The Hobbit, then you read Lord of the Rings. You never mentioned the Silmarillion. You kind of stopped there, didn't you?
No. I did read the Silmarillion.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay. Sorry,
not at that age. It actually.
Can't say that I have.
I tried.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
It's like a fucking university textbook. I just couldn't get through it. Anyway, Dave, you were going to say, sorry?
Well, no, I was going to say, Pete's, when Pete joined the group, there was a few that was starting, and, our late, great Tavel was one of the first to of that age bracket to join our group. And the thing is that, I had a keen interest in Tavel and Steve because they grew up in the same environment I grew up with regards to the gangs. I mean, same for you, Mo. Is the gangs, you're surrounded by the gang violence.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we lived in. And so, role playing for me was an opportunity to do something that, again, I've mentioned before, but, we didn't have any money or a lot of money. And, it was something that we could, just invest a little bit of money into some books and dice, and, we're off to the races, and our imagination is our only limit. And so, from there we got an opportunity to escape the, the darkness that we were all immersed in. Well, when we got a little bit older and, we started thinking about university, there was a positive light to this that, we're starting to work ourselves out of that ugliness that we were in. And oddly enough, I ended up coming back to the same neighborhood that I had left, which was at Fleming, Center Fleming. And there, I grew up, but I went to school, but then my sister was there, and she had some friends who were growing up there and also experiencing this isolation and this darkness, and they weren't sure where they're going to go, and they're getting involved with trouble, and their families are getting involved with trouble, and so forth. And Tavel and Steve and a couple of others, they were amongst the first that I said, look, why don't you come with me for a little bit, and let me talk with you a little bit about this necessarily Dungeons and Dragons, but sci-fi and fantasy and so forth. And if you have an interest, you can come with us, and you can spend sit in on a couple sessions if you want. You don't have to say anything or do anything. Just join our session for a little bit, and if it's something that's interesting, we can make you up a character and get you introduced if you want.
Hey guys, tell me if this thought hasn't struck you just now. Don't you think that the Scientologists should get their hands on Dave?
Sorry, I couldn't take people's money like that.
Yeah, but seriously.
Cool. And it's interesting. I mean, it could go badly, I guess. But,
but the thing is, where I grew up and where, T and those guys were growing up, it couldn't get a lot. It could get worse, but it couldn't get a lot worse. And
the only way it could get worse would be terminal.
They were spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
And if spending 1 week, one day out of the week, with some guys, and we'll chat about movies and whatever, just to give them a break from that, then it was worth it. At whatever cost it was to us, it's worth it. To give back, because we were there too at one time, and I wish I had somebody then, as I could be for you guys.
That's why it was a great experience for me, because, like I say, if I'm 12 years old and I'm hanging out with a bunch of, university-educated guys, as Dave was like the catalyst, but it was everybody there. Yeah. It was a great environment, so it was a great influence for me. And instead, you could do a lot worse on the Saturday night if you, you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like we could have been out doing the wrong things, I mean, it's funny because as you get older, like you said, for me, I think I had a bit of a different experience than you guys, because the group that I engaged in, we were so far apart in age. Mm-hmm. So when I went back to school, mm-hmm. you guys weren't there with me to game, right? Mm-hmm. So now I've got to try to find people who are into this kind of stuff. But yet, see, this is how I was like closeted as a geek, because you don't really want to come out and say, hey, anyone want to play Dungeons & Dragons? So, you find yourself sneaking off with some guy into the corner, almost like
easy.
It's almost like you're doing a drug deal.
That's not what I was thinking you were sounding like.
I know, but I mean, you're going off where you're looking left, you're looking right, and then you pull out like a D20 out of your pocket and say, look what I got here, buddy. Oh, yeah. It's funny and everything, but it could almost be, I mean, I don't have the direct experience myself with being gay. I'm not, but, I mean, it could almost be equated that way, because if you were gay and it was this way, it was frowned upon when I was a kid at that time, right? So you would have to sneak around like that. That's a bit of an understatement. Yeah, right. So you would have to sneak around like that, and how would you find people that you would...
like interests.
Collaborate with, of like-minded people without letting the cat out of the bag, No,
it's true.
And that's how it was. Like, I wasn't going around, again, like we said, I wore a couple different hats, so I wasn't coming out as a geek anytime soon, right?
Right.
And I found that, have you ever noticed how you have, like, different groups of friends?
Yeah.
So you have one group, let's say the jocks, and then the geeks, and then... Or maybe some people do. I guess some people gravitate to one.
Well, it is. You have your work people that you hang around with, and you have, your family, and there are different groups of people that use.
Yeah. Well, but we'll talk about that in a second. But again, for the people that are listening and so forth, and you're feeling isolated, you feel like you're alone because because of these interests or whatnot, thankfully there is the internet, which isn't necessarily the safest way to go. But
not at that time, though.
No. But I'm saying now for people who are listening now, and in the near future, it's not the safest way to go or to reach out there. But I think
sometimes it's all that anybody has.
Well, and again, there is a change in mentality now. to people who have our interests. And I think it's a little bit easier to find us now because we are going out there and maybe commenting on a board or whatnot.
Yeah.
We're joining a guild, a Monty Python guild, as we said in the gaming episode. These things are out there for people to join, and if you're feeling isolated and you're feeling alone and you're having negative thoughts and so forth, everyone will tell you there's always some group that you can talk to, maybe your pastor or what your religious affiliations or whomever. And if you can't,
I don't think any rabbi would be very understanding of Dungeons and Dragons.
well, you know what, a lot of people
I
are getting very
disagree.
progressive. A lot of them are starting to get really progressive. So I'm saying that if you even with those sources out there and you can't find someone to talk to or whatnot, there's always, some online stuff, but you can always leave us a note too. So, we're putting that out there that we're happy to give a friendly ear for anyone who has any
sure.
questions out there.
I know with me, when I first realized there was far more people, it was a convention I ever went to.
Was that the Ad Astras, or did you go on?
Yeah, for Ad Astra 1.
Oh, yeah. That was before me.
Way, way back. And my friend Ian, that I talked about earlier, and I went together, and we came down to the city and, had booked a hotel room. It was a hotel downtown somewhere. I forget exactly where now. Somewhere in the Wellesley and Young area. And it was great seeing all these people that were like-minded. It was more of a literary con. It didn't have actor guests or anything like that.
Right.
But and it was back in the day before video, so you had a movie room where you had, you could watch actual film
Right.
movies and
before VHS.
yeah, before VHS and there was even an asteroids game in the
Nice.
in the con suite, like
Yeah, nice.
Luxury.
But seeing all these people that were like-minded and it was quite uplifting to see that, and it's much easier to go to something like that with like Fan Expo every year. And
Yeah. Well, when I first started going to the conventions, through you, I mean, that's how I started going to Ad Astra too, and they had the art show there, so that's kind of how I started. Remember, and I had started putting some pieces up for sale, and I did pretty well. But the thing that I remember when I went to my very first convention, and I was already feeling, kind of, I was starting to realize that look, I'm geekish, or I'm nerdish, whatever you're going to call it at the time, but at least I had you guys now, and so we were going to this convention, and suddenly I'm surrounded with people dressed up in all these different costumes, and people are giving me the Vulcan salute and stuff like that, and I'm thinking, wow, at least I'm not as bad as them.
well, I know. We went for dinner at a McDonald's on the corner and of Young and wherever, and we weren't dressed up. We hadn't gone to dress up and cosplay, which is now called cosplay, but masquerade back in the day.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people that we got together with this group, and a lot of them were in costume, and the regulations that are surrounding us these days. We went in and we all sat down and had ordered and sat down, and the one table became the weapons table. Where everybody's guns and swords and you name it was just taking up the one table. It was the people coming in off the street.
There. But what you guys were actually starting to talk a little bit about, which is actually the kind that I can kind of relate to, is that we've acknowledged that we are geeks, or that we're nerds, or we're interested in this genre, but we have to feel like we have to keep it private, for fear of alienating ourselves from our colleagues or from family or certain family.
Well,
whatnot.
actually, Dave, in my case, it was the exact opposite.
How so?
Well, you see, I started out as being alienated.
Yeah.
You see,
because of because of the genre interest? Or?
No, actually, completely separate from any kind of interest whatsoever. You see, my parents wanted to make sure that I had a proper Jewish upbringing, so they enrolled me in a private Jewish school.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, while the vast majority of the students in the school, like, were from well-to-do families, because this was, pretty exclusive school, I was, I lived in Ontario housing. My parents both held down manual labor jobs. I was, and straight off the bat, I can distinctly remember, even in kindergarten, a kid coming up to me and saying, "My dad's better than your dad because my dad's a lawyer, and your dad just drives a taxi." And in grade 1, I was diagnosed as dyslexic and what they called back then hyperactive. Now it's ADHD.
Yeah.
And that just poured fuel on the fire because, it wasn't anything that was made confidential. The teacher told everybody in the class. And, I was already the poor kid and then got labeled the freak who can't learn or whatever. And when my parents were told that I had a learning disability, their English, being immigrants, their English wasn't all that great to begin with. So the teacher had to try to explain to them what a learning disability was. And the best that they could understand from this English teacher who didn't speak a word of Hebrew either was that the teacher was trying to say that I was stupid. And my mother got so pissed off, she, instead of letting me go to school the next day, she took me to a public library and said, "You're going to pick a book, you're going to read it, and you're going to prove to this teacher that my son isn't stupid." And just by chance, earlier in that week, my dad had let me sit up and watch with him a James Bond movie. And so I went into, when I'm wandering up and down the aisle of the library and I see this book with 007 on the spine, pulled out Dr. No and never looked back.
Yeah.
And even though I was dyslexic and ADHD, I was tearing through books like nobody's business. And that led to comic books as well, and, it just went from there. But really, in my case, being a nerd or a geek started from being isolated for other reasons.
Right. Actually, I've heard a like story as well from a friend of mine, colleague, and what she was saying was that she was very intellectually smart. She could really pick up things very, very quickly, and because of that, because of her intelligence, it isolated her, from her age group.
Well, and also for girls. I mean, like you talk, it's not that uncommon with girls that especially like our generation were taught after a certain age that if you were smart, you're never going to find a guy because. Well,
that's true. But she had sort of the combination of stuff going on in that she was in a small town. She was very strong intellectually. She was put up a grade, so now there's the age gap difference, and other things, and that similarly isolated her from her age group, from her sets of friends, and that's what got her interested into reading and into inevitably into fantasy books and novels and whatnot, and inevitably move her into like video games and so forth, and that's what her interest is now. But she was similarly isolated in her case because she was so advanced at her age that she didn't have that ability to relate with her own age group so well, and obviously not invited to the parties and that type of thing, which can hurt, especially if there's expectations of a girl that is not fitting in this way.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people out there who have that type of story. But with regards to now here we are, we've identified that we are this, but we have to purposefully keep it separate from our regular lives because what, as Pete was saying, you've got your different hats, and maybe you're interested in sports, but so you'll talk sports with your sports friends, but you may not necessarily talk about your role-playing interests or your video game interests with these sports guys because you're for fear of alienating them. Even for myself, I don't talk about my sci-fi fantasy interests at my workplace because I deal with a lot of senior people and they may not necessarily be interested in this, and it could hurt me profoundly. But it's one of the things I envied very much so from from T was that he was able to show his interest so openly, and I wish I had some of that, but in my work I just can't.
And I've been lucky for working in the bookstore as long as I have that everyone expects it of me. Like, go-to guy for sci-fi in the store. And I've been pushing, I hate to put a plug in here, but...
Go for it!
I've been pushing this series of books called The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. It's 5-book series so far, and the TV show is starting in December. Space is running it. It's sci-fi's highest budgeted series ever.
Wow.
And it's the books are terrific. They're award-winning novels, and the box set just came in a couple of days ago with TV tie-in cover to it, and
a big deal.
Thomas Jane is starring.
Ooh, the Punisher.
Yeah.
Well, the former Punisher.
One of them.
It's produced by the people behind Iron Man and Children of Men, and the director's off of Breaking Bad. But it's my workplace. It's expected of me to do that. So I'm sort of the weird one that everyone comes to me for the sci-fi stuff.
Right. How about that?
Okay, so my geekdom, obviously, I've held on to all the fantasy stuff. I'm into Game of Thrones and all that. But in terms of geekdom, as per the definition of geek, and less the label of geek, I think mixed martial arts. For a long time, I've been super interested in MMA and all the fighters. Not necessarily stats, but I'm just really into the fights and the industry and what goes on behind the scenes and the daily news. And I have an MMA blog, MMAHQ.net, where I just do all kinds of MMA news and op-ed pieces and all that stuff. So I think I really get into depth with that and long conversations and speculations.
But do you find that, for example, you said you're interested in the Game of Thrones and I suspect other
everything
genre type thing. But when you're working or you're with family and so forth, is that a topic that you can bring to the table, or is it something that you just sort of keep separate? That you have your family life, your work life, your whatever.
And there's nobody in my family who's interested in that type of stuff. It's pretty old fashioned, I mean, they don't like make-em-ups. And make-em-ups is essentially fiction. Anything that's not plausible in real life is nonsense. In my family. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, which includes, cartoons, right up to everything, sci-fi, everything's out the window. It's just, all you can watch is, like, police dramas and, like, stuff like that.
Because the way that the police solve those crimes is how it happens in real life.
That, or like,
my brother, the RCMP officer, will take...
Where I was in my office cafeteria, if you want to say, and there was another table. I was wrapping up, getting ready to go, and there was another table, and they were talking about Westworld. And they had some question, like they were talking between themselves about Westworld.
Where nothing can go wrong.
And that's exactly what I was about to say, but I kept it to myself because I didn't want to... be a part of this conversation there. So I kept it to myself. Whereas if I was with the group or whatnot, obviously we'd be quoting all kinds of quotes and so forth and enjoying ourselves with what we remembered from the movie, which I wish I could have done. But in this setting, I couldn't afford to. I had to keep it to myself.
And remembering that Jurassic Park is a remake of Westworld, and the new Westworld TV series starting this.
Oh, interesting. Is your dinner going to be in a box?
It's Jon Favreau is behind it.
Oh, the guy behind Iron Man.
Yeah. All right. So that aside, the other type of geek that I was thinking of when we were first talking about this stuff was, of course, the geek that's they're geek and they're proud. They're happy. They don't. They're proud to be so. They're happy that in their interests. They're open. They're able to fully express it.
That's a rarity, I'd say.
Well, it's not,
until they're
not so rare.
Well,
it's becoming more and more common. It's still not the be all, but it's
Yeah, but it doesn't really happen until you get into a group.
I don't know. I mean, of course, if you're famous, that helps. You know, the Kevin Smiths, the Van Diesels.
No, but I mean, like you really don't. I mean, the people that don't really, wave their geek flag proudly until they're, say, on the convention floor, or
there's that too. There's definitely people that open up when they're surrounded by their kin, if you want to say it that way. But like we were saying for T, T was fairly open about his interests. He did it at work, and I know it gave him a certain stigma with regards to his fellow employees, but he knew that.
He didn't care.
He didn't care. He would be fine, working his shift, and other people are reading their books or playing on their phones or whatnot, and he was painting his figurines, and that's what he enjoyed doing for the time that he was allowed to do so. Similar with one of our other friends, that this is what his interest was, and he was fine to do it. And yes, he got criticism for it, and he didn't care.
Well, I think that happens more often in the cases of people like Taval or say like me, where you started out isolated for other reasons. So if I'm gonna be screwed, I might as well just be happy about it.
Really, you think that's what the catalyst is?
Well, Taval, to give a little personal background, I mean, he was a native Canadian, and I know for a fact from some reading that I've done over the years that the career he was in is not very welcoming to Native Canadians. Been like huge numbers of lawsuits about harassment against Native Canadians working in his field. So it's pretty much a given that he was already like facing a certain amount of discrimination anyway.
Yeah, but that's not unlike anybody else who has a certain race that's different than the common white.
No, but that's what I mean, though. I mean, he was already in a situation where he was damned no matter what he was going to do.
No, I don't.
So
I don't think that was the case.
Because that's very often how I feel.
He was very much. I mean, when he was first getting involved with the military, which was a very happy thing, for him to want to change his life, and he was doing the military, and then he extended that, and then he got into security, and then he got into corrections, and through the whole gambit of it, he still remained himself. And that was one of the things that I had often respected the most, was his ability to do that, despite everything else. And there wasn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him, and we all still miss him. But
well, he was a good guy. He was a good guy.
He could have gone a very bad way, with regards to how he was growing up and so forth, and he managed not to do that.
Well, as long as we kept the Cheetos away from him, everybody was safe.
Well, where fingers are safe. But he was able to do this, and that's something that I always envied.
Yeah.
But and he was happy. He was happy doing it.
He will be missed.
Yes. But there are still lots of people out there that are they're geek and they're proud. They have a certain way about them, and they don't care if other people are. And I think that thanks to the Van Diesels and the Kevin Smiths of the world, and the Big Bang Theory, and
the Big Bang Theory. That's an excellent example.
And even MythBusters, and all these things that are dealing with science and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think what you guys are saying is how things have changed.
Yeah.
Because now it's great to be a geek these days. I think you could also attribute some of it to computers.
Oh, for sure.
Computers have been around for a long time, and they were computer geeks for a long time. But now the fact that everybody uses computers, you're no longer a geek.
But you're still dependent on the geek.
Exactly. Now they're the gods of these little devices that everyone needs to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, watch the new Muppet TV series. Have any of you caught it yet?
Yeah.
And there's actually the tech guy Muppet, and
really?
I kid you not, I can't remember the character's name, but
I can't either. But
they designed him to look like the really over the top, ridiculous stereotype of
like the guy who owns the comic book store.
No, more like the techno geek.
Okay.
Like really big glasses, always has a stunned look on his face, buck teeth, constantly breathes through his nose really loud, but still has his mouth hanging open.
Nothing like
Pocket
supporting the
protector,
stereotype.
Yeah, pocket protector,
Yeah.
and no one remembers him. Who are you? Oh, I'm so and so. I'm the IT guy. And he seems to be wearing a combination of coveralls and a white polo shirt with a pocket protector.
Yes.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is now geeks are guys like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. You know what I mean?
Adam
So
Savage.
so when you've entered this economic realm on a large scale, like you used to think like, oh, who's a rich guy? Well, you're picturing some like big mustachioed Texan oil baron or something
Trump.
like that. With
Trump.
its-
Donald Trump. Oh God! Please no! Please no!
Oh, get ready, Trump 2016.
Forecast.
So
Shoot me now.
so like now geeks, you know what it goes back to? And you guys cut me off, and I'm not going to allow it again. It goes back to
So what were you saying,
video
Dave?
game
Help with those stars.
the video game episode where I mentioned gamer girls, right?
Oh, get the hose!
because now geek is a viable thing, and geeks have become sexually attractive. Let's come right out and say it. Like, they hold some currency in that realm now, which before, it's hard to get a date when you're hanging by your underwear from a, lamppost. There's some job
Revenge of
put
the
up there.
Geeks.
Yeah.
Revenge of the
Oh
Geeks.
God!
Yeah.
The wedgie.
But you know what? Yeah, I would like to agree with you there, Pete, but I can't, because I think you need to be, the Bill Gates to get the recognition that brings. Because, the people that are a level below him, may be known in the business community, but they're not known that well to the geek community.
Right.
Because, I agree that, the power is in the geek, for sure. But when you're in the big businesses, every tech person is still treated like service people. Even if you're like the chief information officer or the chief
Very true.
technology officer.
You may as well be the guy scrubbing toilets.
You are still service as far as the business is concerned.
Yeah.
Now, the title is good, the money is good, it's still respected, right? But as far as the job is concerned, just make it work. It's supposed to work. Just make it work. Whereas, how many times do you go to a doctor and he'll give you a billion different options? Oh, it could be this, it could be that. Let's try this drug, let's try that drug. And it's okay. But if your tech guy can't fix your problem when you walk through the door, he's useless.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, the problem with tech is that it's always changing, I know a buddy of mine who got, I forget what the certification was. It was years back. But by the time he had finished the course, it was obsolete.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's basically what happened to Susan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she went through for tech stuff, and by the time she got out, it was worthless.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
there's
great
also-
to be proud of your geekdom. I admire it. I wish I could be more like that. But there is a cost that when you unless you're talking about fantasy and movies and so forth that are you can always come back around to. But if you're talking about cutting edge technology, you're only as good as the next piece of technology that comes along that replaces you.
Yeah. But I mean, I've got a relative who used to be the head of IT for a major financial institution that's based out of Toronto, and he discovered at one point that even though he was the top IT guy, respected, really good pay scale, all that sort of thing, he was never going to be allowed to advance beyond that because that's where they wanted him.
Absolutely right. Most CEOs come from sales. Almost none of them, unless they're self-made, come from IT. That's the way it is. And granted, there's always the exceptions. And for sure, the richest people, some of the richest people out there today, self-made, are techie dudes. But that's the exception.
It's weird. It's almost like the tech industry has become like a blue-collar type of profession,
Yeah. Didn't used to be.
It's true.
Right. It used to be a much smaller group. I mean, everybody wants to get into tech these days.
Yeah.
Or in the past couple decades, because it is the future.
Well,
And-
it would be more accurate to say that most people want to get into tech. Everybody that's in tech is now trying to get out of it.
right.
In some respects, yeah, that's true. So again, for the geeks that are out there who are proud, thank you for being proud, because it enables a lot of us that can't express ourselves so openly. We can live a little bit vicariously through you, but also when we have the various events that go on, be it a movie premiere and we're all lining up like geeks to see this damn movie.
Oh yeah.
We can all line up together.
It's so funny when you line up for certain movies how you can tell. Look at the marquee to see what movies are playing. Look at the lineups, and you can tell which lineup is for which movie. Either.
Okay, but can you imagine what the lineup will be like when the next Star Wars comes out?
Oh God, yeah.
Insane.
Right? Let me not say it, but more specifically, and I'll say it again, what the line will look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to see people, going.
It's
This
Fan
is.
Expo.
You're going to be seeing people going up to the usher saying, "These are not the droids you're looking for."
No, these aren't the tickets.
Yeah, these aren't the tickets you're looking for.
Yeah.
You'll look like
At
the
last, we will expose ourselves to the urinals.
You remember the cantina scene?
Oh, which one?
Yeah, that's the kind of lineup you're gonna have.
Exactly.
Oh God.
Yeah, but you know what? Even you got the celebrities out there. You've got the self-made cajillionaires out there, making geekdom, popular. And now you got, you have movies. You have movies out there that, are all, not all, but there's so many out there that depict, the classic geek and.
And TV's going that way now too.
TV.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I mean, you got Big Bang Theory for starters. I mean, I'd say that was where between Big Bang Theory and MythBusters, that really got the ball rolling.
Oh, yeah. For sure, yeah.
And I mean, if you ever actually watch like the early interviews between, for the MythBusters, like Adam Savage and Jamie Hyneman, Adam is the geek, Jamie is not.
Yeah.
And
he's
one
a techie.
thing, yeah, and well, not even that. He's just the guy that's interested a little bit in everything. He has done and tried everything, but he is a jock without question. So? Oh God, he is a jock. Right. And the funny thing is that, like, if you listen to the interviews, they originally the pitch was made to Jamie. Adam used to work for him and had long since left, and Jamie realized right off the bat that he, with his personality, he just couldn't make the show. I mean, he could do all the stuff, but nobody would find it interesting.
Yeah.
And he said, "Who would
the
be
comic relief?"
Well, not so much the comic relief, but at least somebody who, would actually be enthused. Because let's face it, he's a monotone robot.
Yeah, that's true.
But the first person that came into his head was Adam Savage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's true. There's definitely something to be said about that. But getting the presidential recognition, I think, helps a lot. So with that, guys. I appreciate you coming on and giving us the stories of your lives and your friends' lives, and hopefully there's some people.
No, hold on, Dave. You haven't geeked out yet. All three of us have. You haven't geeked out yet.
Yeah, I'll be happy to geek out and chat as much as you guys.
No, you got to geek out. You got to geek out on something. I
have to edit this.
No, I have to edit this.
No, you have to cut it.
Come on, one geek out. Come on.
I see the deadly hamburger has done its evil
work.
I can say monocytic.
Monosodium glutamate. You can't even pronounce it.
I could say rat droppings. It does not mean I want to eat them.
There we go.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming on this particular episode. It's a little bit different, but hopefully we've reached some people out there who are feeling a little bit isolated or alone. You're not. So appreciate you guys coming on this episode.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. You were great.
Awesome.
Anyway,
as usual,
that's it for another episode of Geek Talk MD. So, put away your lucky dice, pack up the Chinese food menus, and we'll see you next time. Good night,
all.